I've been fucking studying David Goggins. Not just reading his books, but studying this dude. I listen to what he says, and then I break down his language. I watch all the interviews. I watch how he responds when questions are asked. I watch how he goes in. I watch how he thinks. And so why am I doing that? Because I want to model this dude. There's something extraordinary about him. So anyway, as I've been studying him, what's becoming clear to me is this dude's an enlightened being. Not necessarily in the way that we typically use the word, like some, monk that sits in a cave, or somebody that, moves through the world with tranquility as a, as an infectious tranquility where other people just become relaxed around them. I mean, that's not his brand of peace. His brand of peace is equanimity with pain, with struggle. It's something more beautiful, in my opinion, in my taste. So I want to share something that I think I'm laughing because it's all about shit, that I think is so interesting and ironic in his speaking. He uses the word shit, or the concept of shit, in a few different places that I think are relevant. First, he has this phrase, poopy pants, which is always kind of like, it just kind of stands out because he's just like beast and savage of a dude, and he uses kind of like cute little kitty phrase. He talks about, sometimes I wake up in the morning, man, and I'm just Mr. Poopy Pants. And it's like, okay, which is basically his name for like just feeling down on himself, not feeling like doing anything, feeling weak. And he gets over it, and doesn't matter that he feels that way, and he takes action anyway. And so that's an indicator. But when you listen to him talk about it, what's interesting to me is the way that he relates to being Mr. Poopy Pants as a certain person. I think he even has a name for that person. Maybe it's like David Goggins versus Goggins or something like that. But he has a way of relating to that way of feeling and thinking as an entity, as an other almost, which is an expression of his witness consciousness, his ability to observe that as something. But here's the important part. Not only does he have that witness consciousness, I would say that he has a loving kindness towards that aspect of self, because what he doesn't do, which most people do, is when he becomes aware of being Mr. Poopy Pants, most people then, they take that awareness and they weaponize it. And they get down on themselves for being down on themselves. They get poopy pants about being poopy pants. Not David. At least not in his speaking, not my experience of him. When he can see that and he's aware of it, it just is, man. And now he's got choice. He's got choice to be something else. And he chooses to be the Goggins, be the person that goes and does the run, does the workout. And so that right there is an expression of a certain degree of consciousness that has been cultivated over time. Not just the witness consciousness, but the agency and the loving kindness to actually not get pulled back in judgment, but to choose something else. And what's amazing to me, and it's a kind of a beautiful irony, is that what he does choose is to push himself so hard, that he actually shits his pants, right? So there's the story in one of his books, I think it's in Never Finished, where he's run so much that his bowels are just releasing, just blood and shit hemorrhaging out of his body, and his girlfriend or fiance or wife at the time has to clean it up. And I thought, isn't that fucking beautiful? Beautiful irony. Not necessarily the shit being beautiful, but beautiful irony that a guy who wakes up in the morning and calling himself in his weakness poopy pants, by being aware of that, by having the loving kindness to not get down on himself for feeling that way, by being able to choose something else, chooses to push himself so hard that he shits his pants. That's not just a coincidence. That's just not just irony. My belief is that actually being okay with seeing yourself as Mr. Poopy Pants is held within the same capacity to push yourself to a point where you actually shit yourself, and to be okay with that too. So the loving kindness to not judge yourself if you shit yourself it lives in the same domain as a loving kindness for not seeing yourself as down on yourself, as acting as if you've got poop in your pants. It's all good. And so the loving kindness actually opens up the capacity in both directions, both to remove you from your weakness and to move you in strength all the way to the breaking point that your weakness was afraid of in the first place. Not only am I going to transcend your fear of seeing yourself as Mr. Poopy Pants, I'm going to push you so hard that you actually do poop your pants, and I'm still going to be okay with it. So that's why an enlightened consciousness can be something that not only has us feel at peace and relaxed with things that would otherwise hold us down emotionally, but it can also liberate a capacity to push so hard that we discover new potentials and new capacities within ourselves. And another thing, what an enlightened being has the capacity to do is to alchemize to alchemize trauma and pain. And so he talks about his dad beating the shit out of him. And again, that word shit, it comes to mind. It's like, how does that links in here? Because what he actually does is he beats the shit out of himself. He's willing to push himself so hard. Maybe in part because he's experienced so much being beaten by other that now he has developed the tolerance and the capacity to beat himself. But here's the difference. An unconscious person might do that. They might live out their trauma. They were beaten and now they beat others, or they were beaten and now they beat themselves, and it's grind and it's hustle and it's all hard, and it's under the duress of an aspect of self that is subconsciously driving them. I don't think that's what's going on with Goggins. The way he holds in consciousness the knowing about what his father did with equanimity, and then takes that and alchemizes it and turns it into an energy that drives him, means that he is allowing himself to beat the shit out of himself towards something higher. He's not expressing it as violence, as far as we know, towards other people. He's not unconsciously expressing it as a violence towards himself, which would maybe, addiction to drugs, cutting yourself. He's instead taken this pain and turned it into an immense power by channeling it consciously into driving himself to achieve things of greatness. I mean, millions and millions of people have been inspired by this man for what he's capable of achieving with the human body, right? That is taking the pain from having the shit beaten out of you and beating the shit out of yourself in a contained, cultured, focused, generative way. And that is what enlightened consciousness gives a person the capacity to do. To take darkness and turn it into light. So, from in my perspective, Goggins is an enlightened being by the way he witnesses his own being and what he does with it. So, something I aspire to. I love him. If you ever watch this, David, I love you. Thank you everybody else for watching. Check his books out. Can't Hurt Me, Never Finished. Much love. Talk to you soon.